All right, we'll start off with questions. If you have a question, raise your hand. We'll find the mic.
You're first again?
Yeah, how about that? I am.
What the hell?
Punch and Judy hitters are usually lead off.
That's right.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that, Coach.
Punch and Judy hitter.
Oh, Punch and Judy hitter. Well, let me see what you think of this. Is as you look at your team in the offseason, is Drew Lock going to be your quarterback for 2020?
Well, I mean, I don't see any options right now. I mean, obviously he finished and did a heck of a job. He won 4 out of 5 games and played well, but he still has a long way to go. He's got a lot of work to do, but we're excited about where Drew is. And so, don't like to show our hand, but I think it's unrealistic to say that we're going a different direction.
John, when you look at how the season finished, is there any thought, I know hindsight's 20/20, but is there any thought to maybe, man, I wish we would have played him earlier?
He hurt his thumb. He got hurt.
Do you wish we would have brought him off IR earlier?
No, because how many years? So he played 3 weeks after IR, right? So we had to get him ready. He can't practice when he's on IR. So, I'd like to think, sure, you look back and say, if that would have happened, if we'd have won, maybe one more or 2 more games, we'd be in the playoff hunt. But, I think with the way things fell, it fell the right way, and it worked out the way it was supposed to work out.
Vic, on the assistant coach front, do you expect Rich, Ed, and Tom at the coordinators to all return next year?
I do.
And
All these guys we have a good staff, and I'm sure some opportunities will come up for some of the guys, and we'll deal with those as they come.
follow up on that, Rich's work with Drew specifically, what stood out to you about their relationship?
I think over time, especially as Drew started playing, that it was a good relationship. I think they had a good trust between each other, and I think the results, although they weren't record-setting, the results were good.
John, because of the way you finished 7-5 over 12, a winning home record, does it feel like maybe the first time in years that you have turned the corner? And what is it about this group that makes you feel that, if it is the case?
It does. I mean, yeah. I mean, I'm excited about, obviously, when you finish 4-1, you're excited about that. And this is the first time really in 3 years we've finished strong. I mean, we've started, the difference between this year and the previous couple of years is we started slow. And so it feels better to finish the way that we finished. I think, with Vic and his staff and what they did, I'm excited about what he did, and he had a tremendous year for us and battled through some tough times. We had a lot of things that didn't go our way, but battled through that. And I think the most encouraging thing is you watch how this team played the whole year, and they played hard the whole year. And that number one is the most exciting thing. I think, we were always looking, at least I was looking for how can we were obviously at a very low point, but we needed something to get us going the other direction. And, I think with the youth that we have on this team, the young guys that we have, with Drew coming in playing like he played, it feels like we've bounced off the bottom and now we're heading up. And I think, it's exciting looking forward to next year and what we can do with what we can do as far as free agency as well as in the draft that, we got a chance to get better.
Vic, what has been the biggest difference between being a coordinator and a head coach, and perhaps the biggest learning curve for you?
Well, there's a lot of little subtle differences that happen on a daily basis. But, just making the decisions on game day, we went for it a few times on 4th and 1 where maybe surprised a few of you, went for it on a 2-point conversion to win a game, tried a 57-yard field goal yesterday to make it a 2-score game. Those things are different, where as in the past you have your opinion and your suggestions, Now you make the decisions.
John, I'm just, with what you said about Drew, what's Joe Flacco's future on your roster, and what's your understanding of?
Well, you know what? We haven't got into that yet, but we'll look at that and see what what's best. Obviously, we're gonna take some time, and this year a little bit different than we've done in the past is we're gonna wait for our own team evaluations for a month. We're gonna get away from it, and coaches will look at it. Personnel side will look at it, get together in early February, and really get a good objective view of what our team's going to look like next year and what we need to do. And I think that's why we'll take the time and evaluate everything. And obviously Joe will be one of those that we'll look at and see his situation.
Why are you going to wait this year to do that?
Because I think it gives us a chance. It gives us a better look at once we get away from it. I think you get, especially for the coach's view, for them being in the middle of it and as hard as they work, to be able to take some time, get some rest, get away from it, and then maybe at that point in time you have a different viewpoint and probably a better perspective. The farther we can get away from this year and then look back and then go and evaluate our guys like we evaluate free agents or college kids coming out. Take them one go through it, look at each one of them, and go through it and evaluate each player. And that gives us more time to do it the right way, rather than doing it on a personal side, because the coaches get connected with them. And so I think that you get a better objective view when you get away and you're able to go back and look at it individually.
I have found that, when you, like if we were to spend the next 10 days evaluating our players and writing them up and putting a so-called grade on them, and then you go and every team does this, we'll watch their cut-ups from the season. I found out that you may have misgraded some guys after you have a chance to go and watch the season in its entirety, and the emotional level, good and bad, has disappeared. And you make a better objective grade after you watch the entire season again in a logical manner.
John, Chris Harris, sorry about that. Chris Harris said that you offered him a 3-year, $36 million deal at the trade deadline. He's going to be a free agent. If teams bid higher than $12 million a year, how willing are you to entertain getting into a bidding war for him above that number?
Well, again, we're going to go back and evaluate it. We'll have to see what options we have and what's available. We got to go back and look at the money that we have available, and we will go through and make a plan before we get to that, and we will budget it out and see what our plan is and put that plan together. So I can't answer that question right now, but so we'll do that, and we'll do that with all our players. And we're going to look at our budget, see how the pie fits, see how everybody fits in the pie, and do the best job of using our money in the best ways that we can, but also find the players that we hope can get us back to the playoffs and compete for a world championship.
For both of you guys, going back to looking at Drew, what surprised you about him, and what excites you the most about what you saw?
Well, I think the biggest, I don't want to say a surprise, but the time off that he had from when he was injured till he could start practicing again, he really grew as a football player, mentally and emotionally. I think it was a time for him to step back and take a look at what playing quarterback in the NFL is really like on a day-to-day, weekly basis. And he really got better prepared to play during those 10 or 12 weeks, whatever it was, of inactivity. And going back to somebody else's question, I think the way we handled his playing and when we put him in and all of that was just perfect. Perfect. I hope I can be involved with making a lot of good decisions that turn out that way.
For John, after the Chiefs game, Vaughn was pretty candid about his frustrations with losing over the last few years. As GM, Did you like that? Did you like his candor after the game and the fact that he was just generally upset by it?
Sure. I mean, I think that's part of being a competitor. If you're not upset, we get, I mean, obviously, one of the disappointing things about this year was how we played against the Chiefs. We didn't score a touchdown against the Chiefs, right? So they're the team, and obviously our first goal every year is to win the West. And they're the team that we're going to have to beat. The Raiders, the team we played yesterday, is another team we're going to have to beat. They're a good football team. And so we've got our hands full, but I think the frustration came about how we played against the Chiefs, and because we didn't play well either game against the Chiefs, here or there. And so, I don't have any problem with players that get frustrated, because if they're not frustrated, it doesn't matter. But when they're frustrated, it does matter to them. And that's the key thing is, if it matters to them, then what they say is okay. And you know what? He wasn't wrong in a lot of ways at that point in time. But things have changed since then, and that's why, Vaughn played very well yesterday, and he's going to get better, continue to get better. And I think that, I think that Vaughn still has a lot of football in him, a lot. And, I would say that I think that he can still play better than he played this year. And I would tell that to him in my office, that I think you can play better. And, but you know what? He cares about it, and that's the key thing, is he cares about it.
Hey, John, you had some real misfortune with the injuries on your 2019 free agent class with Bryce and Theo and Juwan. Does that change your approach to free agency at all, or do you just see it as an anomaly?
Well, I mean, I think we do as much homework as we can, and get as much information as we can. Unfortunately, there was guys that we counted on that couldn't go, and so that was unfortunate. That happens. That happens in this game, and you're going to have tough years. You're going to have good years when it comes down to injury, and that's a big part of this game. Is when you have a lot of injuries, it's tough to get through that. But we'll look forward to them coming back and helping us next year. I think that Juwan was frustrated with his knee, and Bryce with the foot. So we have them coming back next year, which will add to that. I think Kareem Jackson played tremendous. I think he had a great year. He was a guy that he was everything that we thought he would be and more, especially at safety and the physicality that he played with. So, we're going to go into the free agency the same way. We're going to do all the homework we can, and hope that we don't have the luck that we had this year with the injuries we had. But we think that there's some quality football players out there that can help us.
John, are you comfortable going into next year with Garrett Bowles as your starting left tackle, and how did you view his season?
Well, I think Vic hit it on the nose. Is one thing about Garrett, he was available. He was there every play. I don't think he missed a play this year. And so we talk about availability. He was there. He got off to a slow start, but I think that he continued to get better and better and better, as the year went on. And, we did a better job helping him too. But I think, Reisner did a nice job at left guard helping him and working together, and that cohesion there was good. Vic and I were talking about the call that he got yesterday. You can say that happens all the time, and that doesn't get called. So, and the hard thing is Garrett's under the microscope, right? He's under the microscope, and anytime they say 72, it brings down the whole stadium. But that happens, and he got himself in that position. So we'll continue to work at it. Now, we had a lot of injuries at tackle. Juwan didn't play, then Eli went down, and we had, so again, nobody's in this thing for sure. It's always open competition going into training camp, and we'll evaluate where Garrett is, and talk to Mike and Chris and see what they think, where we're going on the offensive line. But Garrett continued to get better. He got better, and he was available, and that's important.
Two-part, John. Do you feel like you're on the same page with Juwan James on the knee now, on the approach to this offseason in terms of getting him back on the field? And would you be open with Lindsey now that after 2 years to maybe doing something for him contractually wise?
Yeah. I mean, number two first. Yeah, we'll look at that. Again, we'll get back into it when we start planning and budgeting for 2020, where we are money-wise. And obviously, Phillip has done a tremendous job in being the first college free agent to go over 1,000 yards. As Vic said last night, there's 32 dum-dums that didn't draft him, and I was one of them. But we thank God we talked him into coming here. But
I meant to say 31.
But you know, he's been tremendous, and he's got a heart the size of his whole body and the way he works, and so we'll look at that. We'll see where we are budget wise, but yeah, that'd be something that we'll look at. Juwan's got to feel good with that, right? Ultimately, it's his. You know, he's got to come back, and hopefully that knee tightens up for him to where he gets comfortable with it, and that's up to him. And so, you know, having played the game and knowing that, you know what, you can't. Whoever is in that body, they're responsible and how they feel, and you know, hopefully he comes back and he can be the player that we think he can be. And because, you know, we obviously spent a lot of money on him last year because we think he can be that kind of player. And so, you know, it'd be nice to have him back next year. He's going to determine that. I'm not going to try to, you know, they're in charge of their bodies. And, you know, the one thing I don't want to do is I don't want to question it. Right? I mean, it's up to Juwan, and I think that, you know, the trust factor is there that, you know, for us, you know, we have to trust the player and what the player says he can and can't do. And, you know, no matter what the doctors say, it's still up to the player. So hopefully that knee tightens up for him and he come back and be what we think he can be.
For both of you guys, what did you all learn about the depth of your roster because of all the injuries that maybe you didn't know at the start of the year?
Well, I think the one thing that showed is that I think the coaches did a good job of getting everybody ready from top to bottom of the roster. And when guys got their opportunities, most of them made the most of it. You know, even Trey Johnson here the last 2 weeks got to play with Kareem's situation, and he went in there and played good for us. You know, and you can go on and on down the line of the guys that have taken advantage of it, and now they've got their career in a better spot.
You know, yeah, I mean, we had a bunch of guys that stepped up. I mean, a lot of guys, you know, Mike Purcell came in, was tremendous at nose guard. You know, A.J. Johnson, you know, at linebacker came in, and guys, and that's the thing is we got to continue. We still have a young roster, and the thing is these guys got to continue to you know, focus on getting better. And that's how we get better as a team is our young guys got to continue to get better. And so a lot of pleasant surprises, guys that came in and played well for us in tough situations. And so, you know, we still, like I said, we have a lot of youth here and concentrate this offseason getting better. And you know, Andrew Beck came in, did a tremendous job picking, you know, so you can really go throughout this whole roster and talk about different guys that came in and really helped us.
Vic, what did Justin Simmons mean to your defense? And John, how do you weigh the different options to potentially bring him back next year?
Well, he played great for us. And, you know, and I think he'll still at the stage of his career that he can still improve more, especially within the inner workings of our defense, you know, and mastering some of the things we do even better, you know, which will only come through reps. Won't come through meetings. But really a good football player, a really good person, really good teammate. You know, he's everything we want in a player.
Well, and we want him back. So, I mean, you know, the options there. I just, you know, before we came down, I talked to Justin, said, you know what, we want you back. And, you know, he's a great football player, but he's a better man, too. And what he does outside this building and what he's done in Denver has been tremendous type guy he is. These are the type of guys that we want on this football team. So, obviously, we have the franchise option there. But, you know, we'd like to get something done with Justin for long term.
Yeah, are the playoffs a realistic expectation for next year?
Yes.
Vic?
If we win enough games.
One more question. It seems like, Vic, you have a system where some players fit and some players don't. Guys like Wolf and Harris kind of took off this year, seem to flourish in your system. And John, as you guys work together, is it going to be more you have to work together because there's a certain type of player, not necessarily the higher talented player, but a player that fits Vic's systems?
Well, that goes with any system. You know, there's certain players that a bunch of teams wouldn't even consider drafting or signing, whereas a bunch of teams would, for many different reasons. I was happy to see Shelby and Derek have their years that they had, you know, because there's this stereotype that in a 3-4, the defensive linemen don't do as well, you know, the interior guys. Well, that's been proven wrong by those two guys. It was proven wrong by Akeem Hicks in Chicago and many other people through the years. You know, just certain guys fit better than others for everybody's defense, particularly in the defensive line. You know, DBs, I think, are DBs. You know, you can cover, you can't. And the guys that can cover can fit anybody's system. But D linemen sometimes are a little different.
John, the arrow seems to be pointing up. You seem to have found a quarterback. You've got a good core of young players. Considering all the draft picks you have and the money you'll have available, goodly amount of money in the offseason, how important is this offseason to you in your 9th year as GM? Might it be the most important offseason when it comes to getting to the next level?
Well, I mean, I guess when you're losing, you're kind of thinking every offseason is the most important, right? I think that, yeah, obviously with what we have going for this year, with not making any coaching changes, or any head coaching changes, and the fact that we got some continuity there, the players know that. We're on the personnel side much more comfortable with Vic and his staff, knowing what. Again, we get back to what everybody's kind of looking for, what fits and what we do, and what doesn't fit. But I think that we're at the point where the good feel is we've bounced off the bottom, right? Because the whole thing when you're losing, the whole thing is getting that locker room turned around. That's the most important thing, and where they feel like they have a chance to be successful. And it's not like, here we go again. We've talked about here we go again so many different times, especially over the last couple of years, because there was that feeling. And so I think that we've finally got rid of that feeling, and that locker room feels like they got a chance to be successful. They believe in the coaching staff, and they feel like like you said, the young guys that we have, and the excitement that Drew has brought, that locker room's excited again. And I think that's what gives you hope, and they have hope that they're going to be able to be successful. And so I think that's what going in this offseason, I'm excited about this offseason because of what we can do, because now we're not digging to change that locker room. We can now add to that locker room and add the right kind of people, the right kind of players that, again, now, we when we start in the offseason program, that there's that feeling that we can compete. And getting back to the same thing is our goal has never changed, and our goal is still to win a world championship. And that's still our sight. And we talk about not making the playoffs and da-da-da-da, but our goal is still to win a world championship. But the first goal is to win the West. And so now we've got to figure out how we're going to get through Kansas City to do that, because we'll be the defending champs. And so that's what's exciting about it, is the base that we have, the young talent that we have, the picks that we have, the staff that we have, and so things are trending up. Now, that's not to say they're going to continue to go that way. We've got a lot of work to do. Got a lot of, we got to get better in a lot of spots. But I think that the good feel about where we sit now is the fact that locker room feels like they have a chance to win, and that was goal number one, is get that thing turned around. And I think that's a good thing with Drew, as well as what Vic has done, and their belief in Vic, and as well as his coaching staff.
John, you've been around Vic now for about a year. What stood out about the way he coached and the way he led this team?
What's that now? I'm sorry.
You've been around Vic now for about a year working with him. What stood out about the way he coached and also the way he led the locker room?
Well, I mean, I think that the one thing that we talked about last year when we hired Vic was the fact that his attention to detail. And you know what? We took care of the little things. You look at what we did, penalty-wise, and the discipline that the team played with. And I think all those things made, drastic turnarounds from where we'd been. And I think that was a start, but that's what, Vic, impressed was his attention to detail. I think, one of the great things he did, it's hard to make the transition from the box to the sideline and be able to call a defense and be the play caller from the box compared to the sideline. I think, that was seamless. And he did that tremendously in what he did. So he was able to not lose anything what he did as a defensive coordinator, continued to do what he did on the defensive side, but also be a tremendous head coach. And so the players believe in him. And that's again, when we talked about last year, when Dr. Vic, before he was here, those were the things that stood out to me, and that's kind of what we needed, and all those things came to fruition, and where we are and the discipline that we play with, and that's only going to get better. He's got 1 year under his belt. That's going to continue to get better because he's on the base of what he's put on our football team. They understand what those points are, and that's only going to continue to get better.
John, just the way you were talking about Vaughn, you do have a club option. Is your intention to pick that up?
Yeah.
And for Vic, when you go back and look through the 0-4 start, was there anything you came away with about the things you were doing, or is it too soon for that?
No. We got beat in 2 of those games, the Oakland game and the Green Bay game. They just beat us. The other 2, we failed to close the game. And the one game was just, a bad misfortune that I think you all know I'm alluding to as part of it. And the other one was poor execution on a 4th and 15 play. The second one had some similarities to that first one, but it was different in that there was more time left. But we didn't close that game either. And I prefer to look at those things through the football lens of what could we have done better, rather than, saying we weren't ready, we're a young team. To me, there was definitely things that we have control of, some not, that we failed there and in those 2 games. And also likewise with the 2 road games at Indianapolis and Minnesota. And, if we could split those 4 games instead of being 0-4, this meeting would have been postponed.
John, when you look at the depth of the wideout position, obviously you got Cortland. How satisfied are you with that depth? Are you looking to do something in the offseason? Are you hoping Deshaun, Tim Patrick kind of continue to blossom?
Well, I think that, you look at Tim Patrick and then Deshaun, really the last couple, 2-3 weeks really came on. And so, we feel good about that, but obviously we're looking at every position. So we're going to evaluate every position, see what we have available and what's available, but we're going to try to upgrade every position, and I think that's wide receiver. We feel like the guys stepped up when we traded Emmanuel, stepped up and did a nice job, but we're always trying to upgrade. So that would be we're trying to upgrade every position. That would be one that we would look at too.
You talked about bouncing back off the bottom, and this young team being excited about the future. How much of a factor and how difficult was it for you to trade Emmanuel Sanders at midseason, and that allowed this young core to step up?
Well, it's against my nature to trade good football players. It really is, for future considerations, as we did. So, because that is not in my nature at all. So it was difficult. But looking in the big picture of where we were, where Emmanuel was, what was going on with our football team, the future considerations that we end up getting, it made it all worthwhile. What was, maybe at that point in time, maybe losing a good football player was the best thing for our football team at that time. And so, we look back, it was good for Emmanuel, obviously. They're having success there. And, it was good for us. And, we may not reap those benefits yet, but obviously with the 2 picks we got out of it, or the flop of the 4 and the 5, that, in the long run, it should help us. But yeah, in the short term, it's always hard when you give up, for me, because everybody, it's about trying to win now and trying to win football games now, to be able to look into the future and, give up a good football player that, even though physically we're probably not as good a football team after we trade him, but maybe in the long run, as a whole, for a football team, it was the best thing.
I think I asked both you guys this at the Combine and right after the draft. Now we've gone through a full season. How has the working relationship been between the both of you?
It's been great from my perspective. If I need something or want to run something by John, I just walk by and do it. And same thing, if he has something that he wants to say to me, whether it be personnel or scheme, or he comes by and runs it by me. And I think it's been seamless and great.
Yeah, in my point of view, it's been great. And I look forward to working with Vic in the future. I think it's only going to get better and better as we get to know each other even more. But I will say this: Vic has been everything that I thought he would be, and a heck of a lot more. And I think that that's why, the players that we have on this team, but also I'm excited about what Vic and what he's about, and the way he goes about his business. And couldn't ask for, a better guy to work with at this point in time. That we're on the same page, and like I said, we're getting to know each other better. And the bottom line is, I don't get in his way. If he needs something, I try to help him, and if I got questions, I can answer that. So it's been a great working relationship, and I only plan on getting better and better.
Thank you, John. Thank you.
All right.